Welcome to Chill and Learn English. I am so glad you're here.
We really are. It is wonderful to have you with us today.
Today, we are focusing on something so important, which is speaking confidence.
Absolutely. It is such a massive topic for anyone learning a language.
And right off the bat, I want to reassure you, there is no stress here, no pressure at all. We are just learning together.
Exactly. This is a completely safe space, just a calm, relaxed conversation.
So, picture the scenario for a moment. You are sitting on your living room couch, and you are completely at ease.
Right. Maybe you have a hot cup of coffee or tea.
Yeah, exactly. You have a hot coffee, maybe a cozy blanket pulled over your knees, and you are watching your absolute favorite show on Netflix.
Sounds like a perfect evening, honestly.
It really does. And the audio is in English. Maybe the subtitles are off, or, maybe you left them on just as a little safety net.
Which is totally fine, by the way.
Totally fine. But the point is, you are tracking the narrative perfectly. You are catching all those subtle, kind of sarcastic jokes.
You really understand the emotional weight of the drama, too.
Right. Because you have been studying this language for years, putting in the grammar drills, the vocabulary flashcards, the reading exercises.
All that hard work is finally paying off in that moment.
Yes. And in this isolated, really comfortable moment, you feel like an absolute master. You are soaking it all in, and your brain is just processing the English language seamlessly.
It feels great, like a huge accomplishment.
But then the environment changes. You step outside your front door.
Oh, here we go. The real world.
Yeah, the real world. You walk into a really busy coffee shop, or perhaps you log into a high-stakes Zoom meeting for work.
The pressure is instantly on.
It really is. And someone turns to you, they make direct eye contact, and they ask a very simple, direct question in English.
And we all know exactly what happens next.
Suddenly, it is as if a literal circuit breaker just trips in your brain. Your mind goes entirely, terrifyingly blank.
Yes, you can literally feel your heart start to race.
Exactly. Every single vocabulary word, every complex grammar rule you have painstakingly memorized over the last 5 years, it just evaporates into thin air.
It is the worst feeling. You are just frozen there.
You are frozen, staring back at them, completely unable to form a coherent response.
It's a profound, intensely physical reaction. I mean, anyone who has ever tried to learn a second language knows exactly what you are describing.
It is so universal.
It really is. It doesn't just feel like a momentary lapse in memory. It feels like an absolute catastrophic system failure of your own brain.
And if you are listening to this right now and nodding your head thinking, yes, that is exactly the panic I feel, well, we want you to know you are not alone.
Not even close to being alone.
Right. And more importantly, you are in the perfect place today. Because for this deep dive, we have a really fascinating stack of source material.
We do. It is a comprehensive guide and script aimed specifically at dismantling those barriers to speaking a new language.
Now, the focus of the text is on English, but I think it is important to mention that the mechanics, the psychology, and the tactical tools we are going to explore, they apply universally.
Oh, absolutely. Whether you are trying to speak French, Mandarin, Arabic, or Spanish, the brain works the same way.
That is a crucial distinction. And the mission of this deep dive goes far beyond just validating that frustrating deer-in-the-headlights experience.
Right. We aren't just here to commiserate and say, wow, that's hard.
Exactly. Our goal today is to unpack the underlying biology and psychology of exactly why our brains freeze up in those high-stakes interpersonal moments.
Because once we understand the invisible mechanics of that freeze response, we can actually fix it.
Yes. We are going to arm you with a practical, tested toolkit to systematically cross that bridge from passive understanding to confident, active fluency.
I love that. Moving from passive to active.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we dive into the deep end of cognitive science and linguistic strategy, we really need to set the ground rules for the journey we are taking together today.
That is so important. We need a solid foundation first.
And that foundation is this. This is a judgment-free zone.
Completely.
The frustration you feel when you open your mouth and the words just refuse to come out, that is not a reflection of your intelligence.
No, not at all. It has nothing to do with being smart.
It isn't a character flaw, and it certainly doesn't mean you are, bad at languages.
I hear people say that all the time, and it just isn't true.
It isn't. What it actually is a highly predictable, biologically hardwired cognitive hurdle.
Right. It is just biology doing what biology does.
So today is about extending grace and patience to ourselves as we figure out how to rewire those hurdles.
That foundation of self-compassion is absolutely vital. I mean, if
Yeah.
you approach this deep dive beating yourself up for past conversational failures, you are only reinforcing the anxiety we are trying to dismantle.
Exactly. You were just adding more pressure.
Right. We have to look at language acquisition calmly and analytically.
So let's start with the diagnosis. Section 1, why speaking feels so hard.
Before we can start applying solutions, we have to understand the mechanics of the problem.
Right. Why does the physical act of speaking feel so monumentally difficult compared to reading a book or watching a movie?
Well, our source material points out a truth that is so incredibly obvious once you hear it, yet we completely ignore it in traditional education.
What is that?
It's that the vast majority of our language study doesn't actually involve moving our mouths and speaking out loud.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes so much sense when you say it like that.
It is the grand illusion of language learning. I mean, think about the standard curriculum for a second.
Right, you spend hundreds of hours reading textbooks.
Exactly. You fill in the blanks on those endless online grammar exercises.
You passively consume YouTube videos, podcasts, and foreign films.
And you sit back and feel incredibly productive because technically, you are putting in the hours.
But if you were to draw a pie chart of how you spend your study time over a 5-year period, the slice dedicated to actually producing phonetic sounds in real-time spontaneous conversation is often vanishingly small,
Yes, it is almost non-existent for a lot of learners.
which creates a massive structural imbalance. We end up with a huge reservoir of what the material calls passive knowledge, but almost zero active ability.
And understanding the distinction passive versus active is arguably the single most important conceptual leap we will make today.
Let's truly break down that gap for the listener.
Okay, so passive knowledge encompasses all the linguistic information you can recognize and understand, but that your brain cannot yet produce on demand under pressure.
Right, so like if you encounter the word magnificent in a novel, your brain instantly maps it to its meaning.
You don't even pause. You just know what it means.
But if you are in the middle of a fast-paced, unscripted debate with a colleague, are your neural pathways optimized enough to instinctively grab the word magnificent and drop it into a perfectly conjugated sentence?
Definitely not. Not for most people.
Not for me either. If I'm under pressure, my brain abandons all that sophisticated vocabulary and just reaches for the closest, simplest tool.
Right. What would you end up saying instead?
I'd probably just stammer out, that is really good.
Precisely.
Right.
Because really good is fully integrated into your active ability. It requires very little cognitive energy to retrieve.
I see. While magnificent is locked away in the passive archives.
Exactly. It's there, but you can't reach it quickly enough.
It makes me think of an analogy. Like, imagine reading a highly detailed, beautifully illustrated engineering manual on how to ride a bicycle.
Oh, that is a great comparison.
Right. You can memorize the physics of balance, you can understand the exact gear ratios.
You know the exact sequence of how the pedals rotate to propel the chain forward.
Exactly. In your mind, you possess 100% passive knowledge of bicycle riding.
But we all know what happens next.
Right. The second you actually throw your leg over the seat and try to balance while pushing the pedals, you're going to immediately fall over.
Because possessing the theoretical knowledge of an action and executing the physical, neurological application of that action are two entirely different universes.
That analogy perfectly captures the phenomenon. The transition from the manual to actually pedaling the bike is what we call language activation.
Yes, activation. And activation is the grueling physical and cognitive process of dragging a vocabulary word or a grammar rule out of your passive archive and paving a direct, high-speed neural pathway to your active vocabulary.
So you are literally building new infrastructure in your brain.
You really are. And the core truth we have to confront is that this activation only happens through the deliberate physical exertion of speaking.
Wow. So you cannot read your way into being a fluent speaker.
No, you cannot.
Yeah.
And you cannot listen your way into being a fluent speaker either.
Which completely changes the narrative around why we freeze.
It really does. It takes the blame away from your memory.
Right. The reason you can't speak isn't because your memory is failing you. It's simply because you haven't physically practiced the skill of speaking enough.
Exactly. You haven't pedaled the bike enough times to let your brain find its balance.
That makes so much sense. So that is the physical, neurological barrier.
Yes. But the reason it feels so much worse than just falling off a bike is because that physical barrier is deeply intertwined with a secondary emotional barrier.
Right. Language anxiety. I know we briefly touched on the panic earlier, but the source material goes deep into this.
It really does. It is a massive component of the problem.
There is a statistic in our source material that literally stopped me in my tracks. It says as many as 2/3 of language learners experience significant language anxiety.
2/3. That is a staggering number.
It is a massive majority of the global population just walking around terrified of opening their mouths.
Yeah, it's that hot flush of embarrassment, the fear of sounding foolish, the dread of making a grammatical mistake in front of a native speaker.
It is a visceral whole-body response.
And it's important to understand that language anxiety is not just a mild feeling of shyness. It is a recognized, documented psychological phenomenon where the anticipation of social judgment genuinely impairs your cognitive function.
I really want to push back on this, though, or at least explore the mechanics of it further.
Okay, let's do it. What are you thinking?
Well, if my brain already knows the grammar rules, if I have spent 5 years drilling verb conjugations and the knowledge is sitting right there in my passive archive, how does an emotion literally override a learned fact?
This is a very fair question.
Right. Like, how does feeling embarrassed actually make me forget a word I know?
To understand that, we have to look at how our brains process threats and prioritize energy under stress. From an evolutionary perspective, our brains are hardwired to prioritize social cohesion.
Because historically we needed the tribe to survive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Being judged negatively by the tribe used to mean ostracization, which meant death. So when you are standing in a coffee shop and you feel the pressure of an impatient barista and a line of people behind you, your brain perceives that social pressure as a literal threat to your survival.
Wait, really? So my brain treats a slightly annoyed barista the same way it would treat a physical predator?
On a neurochemical level, yes, absolutely. The amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, it basically hijacks the entire system.
Oh, wow. So it just takes over completely.
It does. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. It triggers a fight or flight response. And here is where the freeze happens. In a fight or flight state, your brain instinctively reroutes blood flow and metabolic energy away from the prefrontal cortex.
And what does the prefrontal cortex do?
It's responsible for high-level, complex cognitive tasks, like searching your passive memory and constructing a grammatically flawless sentence in a non-native language.
Oh, I see. So the brain is like, we don't need grammar right now. We need to survive.
Exactly. It shifts all that energy toward basic survival mechanisms. The emotion literally closes the access road to the vocabulary. You forget the words because your brain has deemed conjugation completely irrelevant to surviving the immediate threat.
That is incredible. Your brain is basically screaming, we do not have the caloric energy to worry about the past progressive tense right now. We are under attack.
That is exactly it. And this biological reality fundamentally changes how we need to view our mistakes.
How so?
Well, if we know that making a mistake triggers this threat response, we have to consciously reframe what a mistake actually is. Most adult learners view a conversational mistake as a failure, a deeply personal confirmation of their inadequacy.
Yeah, that is definitely how it feels in the moment.
But from a purely cognitive standpoint, mistakes are just vital data. Every single time you open your mouth, attempt a sentence, and mess up the verb tense, your brain receives immediate feedback.
Like a course correction.
Right. It's the brain's way of saying, that specific neural pathway didn't quite work. I need to adjust the trajectory for next time.
Our source material brings in this beautiful analogy here that I think perfectly illustrates the grace we need to show ourselves.
Yes, the walking analogy. It is so powerful.
It compares our language learning journey to a toddler learning to walk. If you picture a 1-year-old child, they pull themselves up on the edge of the coffee table, their legs are shaking, they take one incredibly wobbly step, and they fall flat on the floor.
And they do this hundreds of times a day.
Hundreds of times. But not once do we look at that child and say, wow, what an absolute failure. You are terrible at walking. You should probably just give up and go back to crawling.
Of course we don't. We applaud them. We celebrate the attempt.
We implicitly understand that the falling is an inherent, non-negotiable part of the motor skill acquisition process. We call them brave for trying again.
But as adults, we lose that perspective completely. Our egos get in the way.
They really do. When we stumble over a sentence in a second language, our internal monologue is incredibly punishing. We tell ourselves we sound stupid, we feel ashamed.
Which just triggers the amygdala again, creating a vicious cycle.
Exactly. What this material is challenging us to do, what we are challenging you to do right now, listener, is to extend that toddler-level patience to your own brain.
Mm.
You are attempting a highly complex neurological feat. You are brave for trying. Every grammatical mistake, every forgotten word is just you figuring out your balance.
So if we synthesize this first section, overcoming the gap requires a two-pronged attack.
Right.
You have to put in the physical reps to activate the language pathways, and simultaneously, you have to completely reframe your emotional relationship with mistakes so that the amygdala doesn't hijack your cognitive access.
Okay, so that is the overarching diagnosis. We understand the physical gap, the translation lag, and the evolutionary biology of the anxiety.
But a diagnosis isn't a cure.
Right. How do we actually systematically dismantle both of these barriers?
Mhm.
It's one thing to sit here and say, hey, don't let your amygdala panic, and an entirely different thing to execute that in the real world.
Very true. Knowing the problem doesn't automatically fix it.
So let's transition into section 2, the toolkit. We're going to explore 5 highly practical, heavily tested strategies designed to build confidence from the ground up.
And the brilliance of these 5 strategies is that they are carefully calibrated to bypass that fight-or-flight response.
Oh, really? So they sort of trick the brain.
Exactly. They are designed to let you build the necessary muscle memory of speaking without triggering the social panic that usually shuts you down.
Strategy number 1 is going to sound a bit eccentric at first, but stick with us here.
Oh, bear with us.
The text recommends this daily habit. Talk to yourself every single day, out loud.
It sounds so simple, but it is incredibly effective.
You are supposed to narrate the mundane details of your life. Like you wake up, stand in the kitchen, and say to the empty room, today is Thursday, I feel a little tired, I am making eggs, the pan is hot.
It does feel very strange initially, I won't lie.
I mean, let's be honest, standing alone in your apartment, playing the role of a sports commentator for your own incredibly boring morning routine is going to feel ridiculous.
It really is.
Isn't this just reinforcing bad habits, though, if no one is there to correct us?
That's a valid concern, but it misunderstands the primary goal of the exercise. We aren't doing this to perfect our grammar. We are doing it for massive physiological and neurological benefits.
Okay, break that down for me. What are the physiological benefits?
Let's start with the physical. Speaking a language is a feat of advanced motor control. Different languages require entirely different muscle movements in the face, the tongue, the jaw, and the throat.
Right, they all have different phonetic shapes.
Exactly. If your native language doesn't utilize the same phonetic shapes as English, like the specific placement of the tongue for the sound or the hard R, your mouth muscles are literally out of shape for English sounds.
Wow, so it is literally a physical workout.
By narrating your life out loud, you are engaging in physical therapy for your vocal tract. You are training the muscles to form unfamiliar phonetic shapes naturally, without the paralyzing pressure of an audience waiting for you to finish.
So it's literally mouth cardio. You are building the physical endurance to produce the sounds.
Precisely. But the second benefit is where the real cognitive magic happens.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is the cognitive magic?
When you force yourself to narrate your current, immediate reality out loud in English, you are forcing your brain to wire your thoughts directly to the English vocabulary.
Wait, you are bypassing the translation phase.
Exactly. For the vast majority of language learners, the internal process goes like this. Observe a reality, like a hot cup of coffee. Then form a thought about it in the native language.
Okay, yep, that's what I usually do.
Then actively translate that thought into English syntax. And finally, speak.
That seems like so many steps just to say one thing.
It is. And that translation lag, that mental detour, is the primary cause of hesitation, stammering, and conversational exhaustion.
Right, because your brain is doing double the work.
By narrating your life out loud as it happens, you are training your brain to observe the coffee cup and immediately summon the English word coffee, entirely skipping the mother tongue.
You are building a direct neurological highway.
Yes. It rapidly accelerates your journey to actually thinking in the new language.
That is a profound shift. Instead of taking the back roads through your native language every single time you want to speak, you are laying down fresh asphalt straight to the English word.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Okay, strategy number 2. Once you are comfortable talking to the empty room, it's time to introduce an objective observer.
And this is where things get a little uncomfortable for people.
Definitely. The source outlines a very specific 2-minute exercise. Record yourself and listen back.
Mm-hmm.
You take out your smartphone, open the voice memo app, Pick a random, simple topic, maybe your favorite food, what you did on the weekend, or a review of a film you just watched, and you talk continuously into the phone for 2 minutes.
Just 2 minutes, that's all.
Then you sit down and listen to the playback.
Which, for almost everyone, is a uniquely excruciating experience.
It is so painful to listen to your own voice. Why is that?
Hearing your own voice recorded is universally uncomfortable due to the way sound resonates in our skulls versus the air. It sounds different to us than it does to everyone else.
Okay, that makes sense. But compounding that with hearing yourself stumble, pause, and struggle through a non-native language, it can feel like pure torture.
It really can.
It is the definition of cringe. Why on earth would we intentionally subject ourselves to that? What is the mechanism that makes the cringe worth it?
It provides something your brain desperately needs but cannot generate on its own. An objective audit.
An objective audit? What do you mean by that?
Well, when you are speaking in the moment, your brain is utilizing so much working memory just to construct the next sentence that it actually doesn't possess the bandwidth to hear its own mistakes.
Oh, interesting. So you literally don't even notice you were messing up.
Right. You don't realize that you paused for 4 full seconds between 2 words. You don't realize you used the present tense instead of the past tense. Listening back allows you to separate the act of producing the language from the act of evaluating the language.
So you become your own external coach.
Yes, but more importantly, it provides an undeniable historical baseline of your progress.
Because progress can feel so slow sometimes.
Exactly. Language acquisition is so gradual that we rarely feel ourselves improving day to day, which can be incredibly demotivating.
You feel like you're just stuck on a plateau.
But if you do this 2-minute recording exercise every single week, and on week 8 you force yourself to listen to your week 1 recording, the improvement will be staggering.
Wow. I bet that is super motivating.
It is. That tangible, undeniable proof of progress is the ultimate antidote to the amygdala's anxiety. It proves to your brain, with hard evidence, that the physical and mental effort is actually yielding results.
I love that. It takes the emotion out of it and turns your progress into data.
Exactly. Data over emotion.
All right, strategy number 3 takes us out of our own heads and leverages the brilliance of external media. It's called the shadowing technique.
This one is fantastic. It's a game changer.
The premise is simple but demanding. You find a short audio or video clip of a native speaker using clear, natural English. A TED Talk, a snippet from a podcast, or a scene from a television show.
Something with natural pacing.
Right. You listen to a few seconds, and then you speak simultaneously with the recording. You try to perfectly mimic their rhythm, their speed, the exact pauses they take, and the emotional melody of their voice.
Shadowing is a fascinating neurological exercise, and I really want to emphasize that this isn't just a beginner's hack.
Oh, it's not.
No, this is a foundational, rigorous technique used by professional simultaneous interpreters.
Wait, like the people sitting in glass booths at the United Nations translating live diplomatic speeches.
Exactly them. It
Right.
places an immense cognitive load on the brain, but the dividends it pays in fluency are incredible.
You know, I've actually tried shadowing before, and my immediate reaction was feeling completely overwhelmed.
That is very common at first.
Yeah, it felt like I was drowning in the audio, trying to keep up with their word choice while processing my own. Is the entire point just to sound exactly like them? Is it just accent training?
It goes so much deeper than accent. The reason you felt overwhelmed is because you were likely still focusing on the individual words.
Yeah, I probably was trying to read every single word in my head.
Shadowing is designed to teach you that language isn't just a clinical collection of vocabulary, it's a piece of music.
Oh, I like that. A piece of music.
Every language has a unique prosody. That means a specific rhythm, stress pattern, and intonational melody. By speaking simultaneously with a native speaker, you bypass the exhausting work of inventing the content, and you pour all your cognitive energy into the delivery.
It's like using training wheels for pacing.
Exactly. You absorb the musicality of the language through sheer osmosis. You learn where a native speaker naturally breathes.
Because knowing when to pause is almost as important as knowing what to say.
It really is.
Yes.
You feel which syllables they stress to convey emotion, and how they seamlessly link the end of one word into the beginning of the next. You are physically feeling what fluency feels like in your own vocal tract, even if you are just borrowing someone else's words to do it.
It trains your brain to expect the natural cadence of the language.
Yes, the rhythm becomes second nature.
It's sort of like singing along to your favorite song in the car. You can hit high notes and match complex rhythms that you could never, ever pull off a cappella because the backing track is guiding your timing. You are riding the wave of their fluency.
That is a brilliant analogy. It's exactly like that.
Which brings us to strategy number 4. And honestly, this is the one that completely shifts the paradigm of how we are taught in school.
This is a big one.
The text emphasizes this rule: learn phrases, not isolated words. This is all about the concept of chunking.
Yes.
Chunking.
The core insight here is that native speakers do not build sentences word by word like a mason laying individual bricks. They communicate using pre-assembled chunks of language. This is a massive cognitive shift. Because think about the traditional classroom model for a moment.
Right. You are handed a vocabulary list of 40 isolated words.
Exactly. You may memorize the word agree.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when you try to use that single word in a complex thought? You have to perform an immense amount of grammatical heavy lifting in real time.
Right. If I want to strongly agree with someone, my brain starts sweating. I have to think, okay, I need the first person pronoun I. Now I need the modal verb could. Wait, it needs to be negative, so could not or couldn't. Then the base verb agree. Then the comparative adverb more.
It is exhausting just listening to you explain it.
I know. I'm constructing the sentence from scratch while the other person is staring at me, waiting for a response. By the time I finish building it, the conversation has moved on.
And that is exactly why you freeze. There is a psychological concept called Miller's Law, which suggests that the average human can only hold about 7 items in their working memory at one time.
Only 7? That's not very many.
It isn't. So if you are building a sentence word by word, you are maxing out your working memory instantly.
Oh, wow.
But if you learn the entire phrase, "I couldn't agree more," as a single unbreakable unit, it only counts as 1 item in your working memory.
That is wild. It's a life hack for your brain.
It really is. You don't have to think about the grammar, the syntax, or the verb conjugation. You just deploy the chunk.
It's like having a giant box of pre-built Lego sections. Instead of trying to build a complex castle wall using tiny single-stud Lego pieces while someone times you with a stopwatch, you just reach into the box, grab an entire pre-assembled wall, and snap it into place.
That's a perfect visualization. This strategy relies heavily on collocation, which is the linguistic term for how specific words naturally and habitually fit together in a given language.
Right, like how we say heavy rain, but not thick rain.
Exactly. Native speakers rely on collocations constantly. By memorizing these chunks, you dramatically reduce the cognitive load of speaking. You sound incredibly fluent and natural, precisely because you are using the exact ready-made combinations native speakers expect to hear.
That makes a lot of sense. It's been on my mind all day. I couldn't agree more. Boom! You drop the chunk, you sound totally natural, and your brain isn't overheating trying to remember if it's supposed to be an adverb or an adjective.
It saves so much mental energy.
This leads us to the final strategy in the foundational toolkit. Strategy number 5. Start low pressure and systematically raise the stakes.
Because you can't just jump into the deep end right away.
Right. The source material notes that perhaps the most common trap learners fall into is waiting until they feel completely 100% ready before they attempt to speak to another human being.
Which is a trap, because that magical moment of feeling ready will never, ever arrive. Never. Readiness is an illusion generated by the anxious brain to delay discomfort. Confidence is not the prerequisite for action. Confidence is the result of action.
Oh, I love that. Confidence is the result of action. So how do we initiate that action without triggering the amygdala hijack we discussed earlier? If we are terrified, we can't just dive headfirst into a political debate with a native speaker.
No, definitely not. You utilize a strategy of systematic desensitization. You build an incremental ladder of exposure.
Okay, what does the first rung of that ladder look like?
You start at the very bottom rung, where the social stakes are absolute zero, talking to yourself in an empty room.
Linking back to strategy 1.
Exactly. Once your brain realizes that speaking English aloud doesn't result in death or ostracization, you move to the next rung. You speak with a classmate or a friend who is also actively learning the language.
Because there is shared vulnerability. If you mess up, it's fine because they just messed up 5 minutes ago.
Exactly. The mutual empathy lowers the cortisol. Then you step up again.
Mm-hmm.
You use language exchange apps.
Right, so you're interacting with people you don't know.
Yes. You are now speaking to strangers, which increases the pressure, but they're also learners seeking grace, so the environment remains supportive. Finally, only after you have built up a robust tolerance for the vulnerability of speaking do you engage in unscripted conversations with native speakers.
You are accumulating confidence in hundreds of tiny, low-stakes micro moments. You aren't waiting for one giant, terrifying leap of faith. You are proving to your nervous system, step by step, that you will survive even if you completely butcher the past progressive tense.
It is a calculated, gradual expansion of your comfort zone, managed entirely on your own terms.
Okay, so we've covered the daily habits, we understand the mental framework and the biological reality of the anxiety.
We have a solid foundation now.
Right. We know we need to talk to ourselves, record the cringe, shadow the prosody, learn in chunks, and climb the ladder slowly. But what about the actual literal words?
Yes, let's get into the vocabulary.
Section 3, vocabulary. Now that you, the listener, have the habits to build confidence, what specific linguistic tools can we put in your verbal toolkit for when you are out there in the wild?
Our source material transitions here into a highly specific vocabulary focus. It breaks down a series of words and tactical phrases that are inherently tied to the act of speaking, communication, and confidence.
This is where we bridge the gap from abstract theory into immediate, practical application. The text highlights 7 key vocabulary words that beautifully map out the spectrum of the speaking experience.
And rather than just reading their dictionary definitions, we should analyze the psychological and physical realities behind these words.
Let's dive into them. The first word is the ultimate goal, right? Fluent. Let's spell that out together slowly. F-L-U-E-N-T. Fluent. Try saying it now. Fluent.
Beautifully done.
The text defines it as speaking a language naturally, smoothly, and with ease. The example sentence given is, she is fluent in 3 languages and switches between them effortlessly.
It's the Holy Grail. But what does it actually mean cognitively?
What does it mean?
Cognitively, fluency means the complete minimization of translation lag. It means the neural pathway from abstract thought to verbal production is a superhighway with zero traffic.
Zero traffic. That sounds amazing.
The energy required to speak is nearly identical to the energy required to breathe.
Wow. But let's contrast that immediately with the second word on the list, because this is where reality hits for most of us. Hesitate. Let's spell it H-E-S-I-T-A-T-E. Hesitate. Try saying it. Hesitate.
Right.
To pause before doing or saying something because of uncertainty. He hesitated for a moment before answering the examiner's question.
This is a crucial distinction. Hesitation is primarily a cognitive gap. The brain is pausing the physical production of sound because it is actively searching the passive archive for the right chunk or vocabulary word.
So it's not a bad thing.
Not at all. What is vital for learners to realize is that hesitation is a perfectly normal, necessary part of the journey. Even native speakers hesitate constantly when formulating complex thoughts. It is not a failure. It is active processing.
Compare that cognitive pause to the third word, stammer. S-T-A-M-M-E-R. Stammer. Say it with me. Stammer.
Perfect.
To speak with involuntary pauses and repetitions, often due to nerves. When he's anxious, he sometimes stammers slightly, but he always finds his words.
Now, to me, stammering feels different than hesitating.
Yeah, stammering feels like a physical misfire. The brain has the word, it's sending the signal, but the anxiety has tightened the throat or the jaw, and the physical machinery trips over itself.
That is an incredibly accurate assessment. Stammering is the physical manifestation of the cortisol flood we discussed earlier. The anxiety intercepts the motor command.
But I love the example sentence the source provided, though. He always finds his words. It normalizes the physical struggle. It confirms that communication is still achieved despite the anxious interference.
Yes, the goal is communication, not perfection.
Let's move to the next pairing. We have articulate. A-R-T-I-C-U-L-A-T-E. Articulate. Your turn. Articulate. Able to express thoughts clearly and precisely in speech. She is an incredibly articulate speaker. Every idea lands with perfect clarity.
Notice the nuance here. Being articulate has almost nothing to do with speaking fast or even having a massive vocabulary.
It doesn't.
No, it is about precision. It is about the clarity of the underlying thought manifesting as clarity in speech. You can speak very slowly, using very simple words, and be highly articulate if your logic is sound.
Which is very different from the next word, eloquent. E-L-O-Q-U-E-N-T. Eloquent. Try it. Eloquent. Speaking in a fluent, persuasive, and beautifully expressive way. The keynote speaker was so eloquent that the entire audience was captivated.
If articulation is the structural integrity of a building, eloquence is the architecture and the interior design.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Eloquence is the artistry of language. It involves utilizing the prosody we practice during shadowing to create emotional resonance. You want to be articulate first. Eloquence is the advanced layer.
Then we have two words that act more like conversational maneuvers. Interject. I-N-T-E-R-J-E-C-T. Interject. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Interject.
Mhm.
To say something suddenly in the middle of another person's speech. Sorry to interject, but I think there's something crucial we're missing here.
To me, interjecting in a second language feels like an advanced power move. It's terrifying.
It absolutely is a power move because it requires immense situational confidence. To interject, you must have fully comprehended what the other person is saying in real time, formulated a counter-argument or an addition, and possessed the audacity to actively disrupt the rhythm of the conversation.
It takes guts, that's for sure.
And finally, paraphrase. P-A-R-A-P-H-R-A-S-E. Paraphrase. One more time. Paraphrase.
Spot on.
To restate something in different, often simpler words, could you paraphrase that last point? I want to make sure I've understood correctly.
This feels less like a power move and more like a crucial survival tool.
It really is the ultimate survival tool. Paraphrasing serves a dual purpose. It verifies your own comprehension, preventing massive miscommunications down the line. And crucially, it forces the native speaker to slow down and simplify their own language without you having to directly admit, I don't understand you.
It's a very polite way of asking for help.
Which leads us perfectly into the next section of the toolkit provided by the source material, the buying time phrases.
These are game changers.
These are specific phrases, pre-assembled chunks, exactly like we talked about with the Legos, that you can deploy to intentionally stall the conversation naturally. The text lists examples like, that's a really great question. Let me think about that for a moment.
Or what I'm trying to say,
Or in other words,
these are arguably the most powerful conversational tools a language learner can possess.
but I have to play devil's advocate again here because my immediate instinct is to reject this. If I am in a high-stakes business meeting and the boss asks me a question, shouldn't a genuinely confident, competent speaker have the answer right away?
That is a very common fear.
Right. If I sit there and say, let me think about that for a moment. Don't these filler phrases make me sound totally unprepared? Doesn't it signal to everyone in the room that my English is weak?
It is entirely logical to fear that, but what is fascinating is that linguistic research and simple observation of native speakers prove the exact opposite.
Really? How so?
These phrases do not make you sound weak. They are actually the hallmark of a highly competent, thoughtful communicator.
Wait, you're saying native speakers use these stalling phrases just as much?
Without a shadow of a doubt. Think about your native language. If I suddenly ask you a highly complex, nuanced question about your career goals in your mother tongue, do you instantly launch into a flawless, unbroken paragraph?
No, definitely not. I'd probably say, wow, that's an interesting question. Give me a second to figure out how to put this.
Exactly. These buying time phrases serve two vital, highly strategic purposes for the language learner. First, from a social dynamic standpoint, they signal to the listener that you have understood the prompt and are actively engaging with it, which prevents that agonizing, awkward, dead air.
Oh, that silence is the worst.
And second, and most importantly, they give your biology a chance to catch up. By deploying an automatic chunk like, that's a great question, your mouth is moving, but your brain is resting.
You're buying yourself a precious 3 to 5 seconds.
Yes. In those few seconds, your cortisol levels can drop, the amygdala panic subsides, and blood flow returns to your prefrontal cortex, allowing you to access the passive archive and construct the syntax for your actual answer. You are buying cognitive processing time without surrendering control of the conversation.
That completely flips the script. You aren't stalling out of weakness or lack of vocabulary. You are actively managing the pacing of the dialogue. You are taking control of the rhythm so your brain can operate optimally.
See this in action. Section 4. The dialogue.
To prove that these concepts, chunking, emotional regulation, and buying time phrases actually work in the real world, the source material does something brilliant. It provides a full case study.
Yes.
Yeah.
We get to see these theories stress-tested under the ultimate high-pressure situation. A job interview in a non-native language.
There is arguably no scenario more anxiety-inducing. The stakes are immense. It impacts your livelihood. The power dynamic is entirely skewed in favor of the interviewer, and you are acutely aware that every word you say is being explicitly judged and evaluated.
Let's look at the character profile the text sets up for this scenario.
Right. We are introduced to Rahim. He is originally from Dhaka. He has been living in London for about 3 years, and he is interviewing for a highly technical front-end web development role.
So he knows his stuff, but the language barrier is adding pressure.
Exactly. We get a transcript of his dialogue with the hiring manager. Let's break down how Raheem navigates this pressure cooker, starting from the very first interaction.
The interview begins with a classic, open-ended nightmare prompt from the interviewer. Tell me a little about yourself.
Oh, that question is terrifying because it lacks parameters. It invites the brain to panic about where to start.
Right. If I'm panicking, I might just start rambling chronologically about where I was born and every job I've ever had.
But Raheem manages the opening beautifully. He uses chunking to establish immediate authority. He says, and try to hear his warmth and thoughtfulness here. If I had to describe myself in one phrase, I'd say I'm someone who is deeply detail-oriented and cares a lot about crafting clean, user-friendly experiences.
Let's dissect the phrasing there.
Yeah.
Deeply detail-oriented. Crafting clean, user-friendly experiences. These are not randomly assembled words. These are professional industry standard collocations.
These are massive Lego blocks of corporate English.
Exactly. By deploying these pre-assembled chunks, Raheem sounds incredibly fluent and articulate right out of the gate. He isn't wasting cognitive energy searching for individual adjectives. He's delivering solid, culturally expected blocks of meaning. He establishes a baseline of competence instantly.
Then the interviewer throws a slight curveball in a very calm, professional tone. Why this company specifically? What attracts you to us?
And here is where it gets brilliant. Raheem literally uses the exact buying time phrase we just analyzed.
He does. He says, that's a really great question. Let me think about that for just a moment. The transcript even notes that he takes a visible, intentional pause before continuing.
If we analyze the psychology of that specific moment, it is a masterclass in emotional regulation. He feels the spike of cortisol because the question requires a specific tailored answer.
Right, he can't just use a generic response for that.
But instead of rushing into a rambling, stammering response just to fill the silence, he deploys the defensive chunk. He takes a breath, he lowers his heart rate, he structures his thoughts.
And because he bought himself those 4 seconds of cognitive processing time, he is able to deliver a highly structured 3-part answer. He touches on their recent innovations, the company culture, and how the role perfectly aligns with his career trajectory.
He sounds 10 times more intelligent and composed than if he had instantly started talking before he knew what he wanted to say.
And then comes the trap, the hardest question of all. The interviewer asks neutrally, what is your biggest weakness?
The interviewer is intentionally trying to push him off balance there.
Exactly. But Raheem's response starts with another buying time phrase. He says, what I'm trying to say is, and then he admits his weakness is perfectionism, which can sometimes slow down his coding.
But he uses chunking, again, to reframe it. He says he now sets personal time limits and views it as an ongoing journey rather than a solved problem.
He takes a potential negative being overly meticulous and turns it into a narrative of growth and self-awareness.
But from a purely linguistic perspective, the ultimate takeaway here is that Raheem's English did not have to be flawlessly complex. He didn't use obscure SAT-level vocabulary. He didn't use incredibly complex nested grammatical structures.
No, he used clear chunks. He managed his biological pacing with filler phrases, and he communicated his core ideas effectively.
The source makes a profound point of emphasizing this exact takeaway. The goal of learning a language is never perfect grammar. The goal is confident, natural human connection and communication.
Raheem got his ideas across, he built rapport with the interviewer, and he maintained his composure. That is a massive life-changing win.
And transitioning from the abstract theory into this concrete case study is vital because it proves these aren't just cute academic exercises. These are legitimate survival skills for navigating the real world.
Absolutely. Now, moving from the case study into immediate actionable steps.
Yeah.
Section 5, the 7-day speaking challenge.
Because theory is great, but action is what changes things.
Right. Our source material doesn't just leave us with deep analysis and theory. It concludes with a direct challenge. It speaks directly to you, the listener, about how you can take everything we've unpacked today and apply it starting tomorrow morning.
What I deeply appreciate about the structure of this challenge is its psychological accessibility. It only asks for 5 minutes a day.
5 minutes is nothing. Everyone has 5 minutes.
But it is meticulously engineered to gradually, systematically raise the stakes and the cognitive load, directly mirroring the exposure therapy strategy we discussed earlier.
Let's walk through this week together because it's brilliant. Day 1 and day 2 are designed to be extremely low pressure, but they are going to feel physically strange.
Okay, let's hear day 1.
Day 1. Wake up, stand in your room, and speak for 5 straight minutes about your plans for the day. Out loud.
And day 2.
Day 2. Describe your bedroom or your living room for 5 minutes, focusing purely on physical, concrete details like colors, textures, and the placement of furniture.
I can imagine the friction on day one is going to be intense.
Hmm.
You're going to feel ridiculous, and your brain is going to scream at you to stop after 30 seconds.
That friction is the sound of weakness leaving the brain. But seriously, the resistance you feel on day one is just the novelty of the exercise. These first 2 days are purely about breaking the ice with your own voice in the new language.
You are in a perfectly safe, private environment. By focusing on concrete, immediate realities, what you are doing today, what the bed looks like, you are minimizing the cognitive load of imagination.
There is zero social pressure. It is pure, unadulterated physical practice for the mouth muscles, and it kickstarts that translation bypass we talked about.
Pushing through the awkwardness of day one is the most important step.
Then, on day 3 and 4, the challenge brings in outside media and slightly more abstract thought.
Ramping it up a bit.
Day 3, tell an imaginary friend about your favorite film or a book you just read, trying your best to use some of the vocabulary we discussed, like articulate or fluent.
And day 4.
Day 4, find a video and shadow a short clip from a native speaker for 5 minutes.
Here, we are intentionally increasing the cognitive load. On day 3, you are no longer just describing a static room. You have to recall a narrative, structure a logical summary, and imagine an audience, even if that audience is a potted plant.
You are practicing the rhythm of storytelling.
Yes. On day 4, shadowing forces you to abandon your own thoughts entirely and focus 100% of your energy on the physical melody, prosody, and speed of native speech. It will feel exhausting, but it resets your internal metronome.
It's steadily ramping up the difficulty. Day 5 and 6 bring in the hardest element of all, emotional and technical integration.
Emotions are always tough in a second language.
Day 5, talk out loud for 5 minutes about something that made you genuinely happy or deeply frustrated this week.
Wow, okay. And day 6.
Day 6, force yourself to use 3 of the new vocabulary words, but this time you have to do it while recording yourself on your phone.
Day 5 is a massive psychological hurdle because expressing raw, genuine emotion in a second language is notoriously difficult. When we are angry, sad, or overjoyed, our biological default is to instantly revert to our mother tongue because that is where our deepest emotional resonance lives.
Practicing emotional expression explicitly in English helps build the neural pathways for authentic, vulnerable self-expression, rather than just clinical information exchange.
And day 6 introduces the red light syndrome. The moment you hit record, the stakes artificially raise. It forces active integration of passive knowledge under the mild pressure of being documented.
And finally, day 7, the culmination of the week. You open your voice memo app, you hit record, and you speak completely freely for 5 full minutes on any topic you choose.
And then, the most important part.
Yes, you listen back to it and you actively notice your fluency, your pacing, and your improvement compared to how you felt on day 1.
If you connect this 7-day progression back to the overarching theme of our entire discussion, it perfectly encapsulates the only true solution to the gap between passive knowledge and active ability.
Fluency isn't a magical switch you flip after reading enough grammar books.
It is constructed painstakingly, 5 minutes at a time. It is built through consistent, deliberate physical practice and the quiet, brave choice to simply open your mouth and try every single day without giving up when you stumble.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's zoom out and summarize this incredible journey we've been on today.
It has been a lot of information, but it's also connected.
We started by acknowledging a very real, very frustrating, and biologically valid gap between the English you understand perfectly when you're relaxed on your couch and the English you can actively produce when the social pressure is on.
We validated that the paralyzing anxiety you feel is a real physiological response, an amygdala hijack, not a personal failing or a lack of intelligence.
We explored exactly how to dismantle that anxiety by fundamentally changing our relationship with failure. We must embrace mistakes, not as embarrassing social defeats, but as the essential, vital data points our brain desperately needs to calibrate its neural pathways.
We have to treat ourselves with the same awe and patience we give to a toddler learning to walk.
We armed you with a definitive toolkit. Talk to yourself to build the physical muscle memory and bypass the translation lag.
Record yourself to get undeniable, objective proof of your progress.
Shadow native speakers to absorb the musicality and melody of the language.
And perhaps most importantly, Stop torturing yourself by learning isolated words and start learning in pre-assembled chunks so you have those Lego blocks ready to deploy without maxing out your working memory.
We also analyzed how to use strategic phrases to buy time, allowing you to regulate your nervous system, maintain control of the conversation's pacing, and project thoughtful confidence, exactly like Rahim did in his high-stakes interview.
It's all about realizing that human language is an extraordinary, almost miraculous achievement.
Every single time you attempt to bridge the gap between your mind and someone else's using a language that isn't your own, it is an act of profound bravery. Every attempt matters. Every mistake is a victory.
Which raises an important, final, and somewhat philosophical question for us to ponder as we wrap up.
Oh, I like a good philosophical question. What is it?
We have spent this entire deep dive discussing how to extend grace, patience, and strategic low-stakes practice to ourselves when learning a second language. We've established that fluency and connection are built by treating every conversation as a safe practice ground rather than a high-stakes performance to be judged.
Right.
But if we now know, biologically and psychologically, that this is the absolute optimal environment for human communication to thrive, how might applying that exact same mindset to our native language change the way we interact? How might treating everyday conversations in our mother tongue with that same level of deliberate patience and truly forgiving ourselves and others when we inevitably stumble over our own words or fail to perfectly articulate our thoughts change how we connect with the people around us?
That is a massive paradigm-shifting thought to leave on. Because the truth is, even in our own native language, we can freeze up, we can stammer, and we can struggle to find the magnificent word when emotions are high.
Exactly. We're all just trying to communicate.
Maybe we all need to view ourselves and everyone we speak to as brave toddlers just trying to find our balance no matter what language we happen to be speaking.
I couldn't agree more.
Your journey matters. Your voice matters. Keep practicing, keep making those beautiful, brave mistakes, and remember to be kind to yourself along the way. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take care.